sphere system here. Going to be discussing the decisions we're currently having considerations on making, as well as how we've made decisions in the past and how we're trying to change that. So we'll start with how I've made decisions in the past. In the past, often decision making has been just whoever happens to be fronting quickly making a decision because well, for various reasons, but that's how it was, which isn't always great. It works reasonably well for smaller decisions and urgent ones, because urgent decisions often it's better to make a decision even if it's not objectively the best one, but at least decision has been made. Anyway, yes, okay. But yeah, so we're hoping to change that around for the more important decisions so that we can make them in a more sensible way that is less dependent on whoever in front at the time it first comes up being able to make the best possible decision. Now, obviously, it's not necessarily going to be easy to do, but that's the hope. We're hoping to get to a point where all decisions that call for it, at least, can easily get input from everyone internally who wants to provide input and has an opinion, and to where even when there is disagreement, a compromise or a solution can be found. That's the hope here. We're not there currently, but that's where we want to be. Anyway, okay. Decisions that we are currently considering. One of them is we're starting to consider potentially looking into some amount of HRT for various reasons, mostly to do with people know why people go on HRT. We don't need to explain that in too much detail. Sure, it's not something we're currently looking for much outside input on as a decision. This is very much a personal decision in that, it the way we see it is it only affects our body, and quite frankly, we don't want anyone who's not in the body playing a part in decisions that only affect the body. Obviously, information and resources are something that we are looking for, so if you've got those, it would be useful. Because before making this decision, we do need to go and find a pretty comprehensive list of potential effects. Both the how common various effects are, how likely we are to see them, that sort of thing. As well as obviously, just so we can do cost benefit analysis effectively on it. But yes, currently some of the system have expressed interest in achieving a few of the better known effects, which has brought this decision into the sphere of things to be considered. It's certainly not a done deal at this point, but it is being considered, even if just in the background currently. The main opposition does currently come from Vamps, who is significantly more comfortable with the body's assigned gender than basically anyone else here. and has expressed potential discomfort with the changes, which is obviously causing some amount of hesitation because Vamps is a co-host and therefore gets has a reasonable amount of say on what the body does to achieve comfort, and has to be comfortable in the body, given that we don't have enough control over hosting. Who's hosting, who's co-host, to go, well, okay, Vamps, you don't want this to go through, but, or if you do, you don't want to be host, well, but you respect other people's opinion enough to want it to go through, and then we can just change hosts. That's not an option for us currently, unfortunately. So, it's very much a, well, okay, everyone who's going to be fronting often has to be comfortable with the changes, which, requires a significant amount of thought and knowledge on what those changes will be to allow for full judgment on that potential comfort or discomfort. So, currently not there with that. This is Vamps has veto rights on the decision, and so going to be, has currently allowed information gathering, which is kind of him, but is not necessarily going to translate to the allowance of any further changes in that along that sphere. We'll have to see on that. But that feels like it feels fair to allow certainly certain individuals veto rights over such important decisions that will cause significant changes to the body. So don't want to pull that veto right away. If the real thing is if Cal wasn't intrigued by the idea, we'd go, well, the hosts are indifferent and against it, so it's not something to look into at the moment, certainly, but Cal is intrigued by the idea, which has meant we can't easily dismiss it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's probably good to have a full understanding of decisions and options, but it has made the decision more complicated. Part of the problem is, of course, that because so many of us are already non-human, figuring out if there is gender dysphoria there gets difficult, as most of us have dysphoria over the body anyway, which of course does cause complications when you're trying to distinguish whether or not someone is uncomfortable because the body isn't right because it's a human body, or whether it's not right because the body's perceived gender and so on is incorrect. Both of these are options, and I think there's some of both going on, but it's very hard to tell. Because when someone is just like, no, the body's wrong, why is the body wrong? You can't necessarily tell why the body feels wrong. And that could simply be, that could be anything from, obviously non-humanness. It could just be that, well, it's not the right human body for some of us in terms of, well, it's not their body in a world, or the more human form in a world. And it can also, of course, be, well, it's the wrong gender. That's the problem. So it can be hard to tell for certain which one it is, which makes the whole thing difficult and complicated. But yes, we suspect there's some amount of gender dysphoria going on, which we would like to fix if possible. Anyway, okay, the other major decision, well, this isn't a major decision, well, okay, the other decision that we're currently contemplating, that this is one I do actually would quite like some input on, is the potential to add in face rigs to our YouTube videos, where we could have representations of whoever is recording the video to provide not the body's face, but a face to the video, which we think might help, give greater ability to do things like convey emotion and things of that nature. It provides slightly more freedom and creativity in video making, and it might just make the videos more entertaining as well, which are all things we would like to achieve, but given that this is a decision that will obviously affect you guys, the audience, we do want your guys' input as to whether or not this is something you think would be helpful or a hindrance to your enjoyment or education value from these videos. We don't want to make a change that means that the videos are less consumable or less, feel worse to view. Obviously, if it's a change that people are interested in and they think it will make things better, that will obviously, help assuage some of the doubts regarding whether or not it's a path worth going down, and vice versa. If people don't want to see it, that helps confirm those doubts, which will help make the decision an easy one as well, because currently it's a difficult decision because some of us have doubts over whether or not it's a smart decision, in that there's a belief that it will add nothing to the videos or nothing relative to the amount of work required, and then there are people who really want to go ahead with it because they think it will add a lot to the videos, and no one has come out and said, look, I don't want a form. People have just gone, is this actually worth the amount of work it would require? Which is a fair question to be asking, and not one that currently there's an answer to. Well, there is an answer, but we don't know the answer. So, do want people's input on that, where possible. Obviously, if you don't have an opinion one way or the other, that's fine. We're not going to say you must have an opinion on this, but opinions from the audience on this are greatly welcomed. Anyway, I'm going to move on to the final section for now, which is why we are finding the process of changing how we make decisions difficult, which will touch on TVMC stuff, so there are obviously some content warnings regarding that for this section. It's nothing too severe, so it should be good, but do proceed with caution, especially, anyway. A large part of why we make decisions the way we do is to do with the history of having a rigid structure imposed on us in the past, where there was an expectation to very quickly make decisions in a very particular way, and that structure hasn't gone away yet, and possibly never will, but certainly currently still exists. Yeah. it was, it's effectively a protective measure in that it is was much easier and safer to very quickly make decisions often between lesser evil, which is the lesser evil, or which of these two harmful things is less harmful, it's just false choice in the first place. Um, often was built on an avoidance of short-term harm, and it's quite a defensive way of decision making. And this isn't to criticize that decision making. It was necessary. It was key to our survival. But it's less useful now. We're in a safer space, and there is a huge amount of criticism for those who did put us in the position where we had to be making decisions in that manner. But this isn't the space for those criticisms beyond the very simple. They didn't give us a good childhood. They gave us a very bad childhood. The point we're trying to make here, though, is that it's difficult to adjust from decisions that are hurt or get hurt, or accept SA or torture. Those decisions, there's some decisions that you make on an instant to get the lowest amount of immediate pain. And, we now hope, theoretically, at least in a space where we can make decisions for the long term. And between safe options as well. And we'd like to start making use of that freedom, theoretical freedom, in practicality. Yeah. Okay. And sign off.